Tom Homan. You are a former American police officer, which we love, and you served during the Trump administration as acting director of ICE. So, sir, how are you? And thank you for joining us.
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. It's great here to be at CPAC this year. And I want to speak to you specifically about the border. You're doing a tremendous amount of work, and I want to learn a little bit more what you're doing there. Our over 2 million AMAC members care so much about this issue, and we understand that what's happening at the border is not something that impacts border states only. This is a situation that impacts every state. Every state in America is a border state. For example, I'm from Long Island, New York, and currently there are many public schools that are experiencing a rise in gang violence. And my friends, family members that I have that are not putting their kids in public schools because we see what's happening. They're traveling north. We've got people who are not legal citizens. We've got gangs on the rise. Tell us a little bit about what you are doing right now with your Project Border 911.
Well, first of all, I understand the New York issue. I'm a native New Yorker. I was born in New York.
All right.
I still have a lake house up there in northern New York. But look, when I was a director under President Trump, we did an operation on Long Island along with Nassau County, a few other counties, called Operation Matador. We arrested just under 500 gang members in Long Island during that long operation, and most of them MS-13. So I understand what's happening with gangs. And you got to understand, when we made those almost 500 arrests, when we looked at the data afterwards, 42% of those people that we arrested came across the border in a family group, posing as a family group. So if people think these family groups are just innocent people looking for a better life, yeah, some, but there's also some that are not really family units, and they're gang members coming across posing as a 16 or 17-year-old. So I understand the issue in New York, and I care deeply about New York because it'll always be my home. But what I'm doing right now is I'm working with the American Project. We're traveling around the country. We got 26 seminars, rallies, if you would. I'm talking about the border issue along with Jason Jones, who's a cartel expert, and we're trying to educate the American people that, look, this isn't just an immigration issue anymore. When you cause a crisis this big that's taken 70-80% of the agents off the line, then that opens it up and makes it vulnerable to drug cartels, makes it vulnerable for known suspected terrorists, and makes it vulnerable for gang members and criminals. And the cartels know that. Cartels drive our southern border. And the scariest thing in my 35-year career, it's the first time in history of my life that the greatest country on the face of the earth, the United States, no longer has operational control of our southern border. The criminal cartels in Mexico own it. And that's just not my opinion. I talked to many chief patrol agents in the Border Patrol that tell me, we're lucky if we contain 10% of what's coming across. One agent used the term broken arrow. He said, I can't contain what's coming across. He goes, I'm lucky if I'm capturing 10%. So when you create a crisis this big that takes 70% of agents off the line, what's that do? Well, that's when they move the fentanyl across. That's when they move people that don't want to be arrested. See, when you go to the criminal cartels in Mexico, there's two rates. You pay a certain amount of money to get across the border and turn yourselves into the Border Patrol. There's a different rate to cross the border and get away. So we got 1.2 million getaways since Joe Biden's taken off. And that's not a guess. That's on camera. That's on drone. That's on central traffic. So you got to figure, who are these 1.2 million that didn't want to turn themselves in? They didn't want to get a free airline ticket to their destination. They didn't want to get work authorization. They didn't want to, get all this giveaway program. Why wouldn't they take advantage of that? Because they don't want to be vetted. They don't want to be fingerprinted. So people need to be concerned who this 1.2 million is. For instance, Border Patrol's arrested people from 171 different countries. Some of these countries are sponsors of terrorism. Border Patrol's arrested 57 people on the terrorist watch list trying to stick in the United States. So how many of that 1.2 million come from a country that sponsors terrorism? That's just scare the hell out of you. Now, I can't tell you how many terrorists have gotten in this country, but someday we're going to find out. It's going to be a bad day for America. So that's why we're going around the country telling people, regardless of your opinion on illegal immigration, understand this drives a lot more serious issues.
It sure does. And you've got to wonder why we have an administration and a president who has people telling him this. Surely he understands, he must know what's happening, and is doing nothing. And that is what our over 2 million AMAC members can't understand. They say, how is it that we could have a sitting president who, on his watch, over 100,000 people have died over drug overdose from fentanyl directly, and also is not doing anything to really prop up and help our great men and women police officers across the nation who are, every day putting on a uniform and putting their lives at risk to protect Americans. We know that police officers, we love them. They're all great. There are always bad apples in every profession that you turn to. What do we need to do as a nation in order to turn things around? Are we forced to wait until 2024 when we have new leadership, hopefully and prayerfully, or is there something that can be done today?
Well, look,
now?
I understand the attack on law enforcement. Under the Biden administration, you're innocent until proven guilty unless you wear a badge. Then right away you're guilty. I was a police officer. My father was a police officer. My grandfather was a police officer. I grew up in a cop family. And I was a Border Patrol agent. I started my career after being a cop in New York as a Border Patrol agent. So I wore that uniform. And I'll never forget that the President of the United States and the Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, who needs to be impeached, stood at the White House podium and slandered the men and women, the men of the Horse Patrol, who did nothing wrong. Video proved that. I saw the video. It took me all of 5 seconds to say they did their job. They performed exactly as they were trained. The horses performed exactly as they were trained. The only ones that did anything wrong that day were the Haitian immigrants that came across the border illegally, which is a crime, that ignored federal verbal commands from a federal officer, which is a felony. But no one talked about that. So this administration that's why Joe Biden, he didn't get, that one police organization in the country endorsed him during the campaign because he's anti-cop. What people need to do, look, understand the Democrats really control the Senate. I doubt a lot of legislation will come across that's going to fix the border issue or the law enforcement issue. But there is one thing you can do. I think first of all, I think that the American people are starting to get pissed off because we just saw what happened in Chicago yesterday. I think they're starting to wake up to these politicians who don't support some police. I think they're going to start being voted out. But in the meantime, for the federal government, even though the Republicans do not control Senate, almost half the people in the Senate are Republicans. So call your Republican representative and say, well, you're not powerless. You can boycott every negotiation. Don't negotiate an infrastructure bill. Don't negotiate a budget. Tell them you're not going to do a damn thing with them and negotiate anything, any legislation, until you show us one thing you're going to do to slow the flow on the southern border and protect this nation. The Republicans do have the House, which has the purse strings. So they're having oversight hearings. I think the oversight hearings are going to bring a lot of good people there. They're going to testify. They're going to see a lot of evidence. I'm helping them. I'm supplying them. Here's who you need to subpoena. Here's the information you need to subpoena. I know where the bodies are buried. I've been doing this 35 years. Present the evidence to the American people. Even the Democrats, there's 24 of them that are facing tough re-elections in 2024 and battleground states that President Trump won. So they're going to have to pick a side. Do you ignore the evidence, stone cold evidence that's presented in front of you in a hearing, and agree that the border's out of control, or are you going to keep playing this hide and seek game and the border's secure? And they'll be held accountable. But another thing that the Republicans in the House have, they have the power of the purse strings. If the government is not going to secure this border, if they're going to abdicate their responsibilities to secure this nation, then shut it down. And people say, well, that's pretty drastic. You want to shut the government down. Well, how drastic it needs to be? We got 1.2 million gotaways. We don't know who they are. We don't know how many terrorists that came across. We got 106,000 Americans dying from drug overdoses of a drug that's coming across that open border. We got over 1,700 migrants have died on U.S. soil since Joe Biden's taken presidency. That's a record. We got a record amount of migrants dying. We got a record amount of Americans dying. The cartels are making billions of dollars a year. Sex trafficking, women and children are all-time high. Yeah, we're at that point. So either you force the administration to do something meaningful to secure the border or shut it down.
Yeah.
And you're going to open some eyes. I think we're at that stage now. How many more Americans have to die until we take this serious?
Yeah, and largely our members do agree with that stance. They care about these issues are very important to them. Secure the border is number one. Ensure that we have free and fair elections. Protect our children in schools. We're working on these issues, and I love that you're reminding our members they've got to make that phone call, and they've got to make sure that they're voting for people who are going to put America first policies. I have a final question for you before we let you run, sir. Tell me a little bit about hope for America's future, 2024. We have so many challenges currently that are facing our nation. We talked about a handful of them. There are many of them. We've got a woke ideology being crammed down people's throats. I'm worried about our children in schools being indoctrinated. How hopeful are you for 2024, and do you think that Americans are waking up to and recognizing that the policies on the left are so extreme and bad for America?
Here's my hope. I hope the right guy comes back to the White House 2024. Who's that man? Donald Trump. I already committed to Donald Trump. He comes back, I come back. We already got the playbook on to secure the border. We did it. Illegal immigration down to 83% at 45-year low. So I made him come back. I'll be taking a hell of a pay cut, but I told him, and I had dinner with him, I said, I'll come back for free. He laughed and kind of said, well, you might want to take the paycheck. But I'm committed to the man. Look, people have their opinions of Donald Trump, but let me tell you something. I worked for 6 presidents starting with Ronald Reagan. Every president I ever worked for thought the border security was important. Even Obama and Clinton took steps to try to secure the border because they understood you can't have national security without border security. No one did more than President Trump. Now we have a president who's taking the White House, Joe Biden, who's the first president in history of this nation who intentionally, on purpose, unsecured our border. I mean, who the hell does that? So look, I think President Trump's right on education. I think he's right on police. He has the backs of every police officer in this country. He was the best guy. He's proven it on the border. So I'm excited. I'm behind him. He comes back. I come back. We fix this garbage.
Yeah. Donald J. Trump was voted AMAC's Man of the Year in 2021. And, you know, our members, they love him. I do pray that I do think he has a great shot. We'll see what happens. We've got other people that are entering the race, but Donald J. Trump had some amazing policies. Our members stand for him, love him, so we'll have to see what happens.
Donald Trump is a proven leader.
Yeah.
He did more to secure this border than anybody. He gave us the most secure border in the history of this nation. There's no downside here. We need to secure the border and save lives.
And he's got some great ideas on crime. He's got great ideas on how to protect our children. He's got some really good ideas. So we need that kind of strength and courage in the White House. We'll be watching and see what happens. Tom Homan, thank you so much for being here. God bless you, and thank you for the great work that you're doing across all communities. We need you. We need your voice and your leadership, so thank you.
Well, they're not going to shut me up, guaranteed. All right, thanks for having me.